Well, another great thing about 2020 is your October surprises. They come a couple of days early. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle now. And Bill, it's hard to miss the New York Times blockbuster report after having, they say, legally obtained a trove of President Trump's tax records going back over decades, reported a couple of top-line findings, among them that in the year 2016 and 2017, as he was running for president, and then the first year he was president, he reportedly paid $750 each year in federal income tax, that in 11 of 18 years during the period of time where they were able to review his documents, he paid no federal tax at all, that the man of tremendous self-proclaimed business acumen actually was able to pay no tax because of massive losses that not only diminished his tax liability in the years that they were incurred, but that he was allowed to carry forward 10 or 20 years. Now, obviously, the immediate question is, did he do anything illegal? That question is not resolved by the New York Times story, but it does raise some questions about whether President Trump should have been more forthcoming just from a communication standpoint. Bill, wouldn't it have been better for him to release his own tax returns in a way that he could set the context for it and help to explain to people how the big real estate business works?
Well, certainly, if Donald Trump were to get on, let's say, an interview with CNN to explain how the big real estate...
I'm not saying he should have picked CNN. Come on.
Well, if he gets on any major news source to explain this, how's he going to explain it? Is he going to do Donald and Son, on Thursday nights with Red Fox? Certainly not with Red Fox. Look, I'm being flip here, but anytime we deal with shouldn't the president have said this to the American people, we got to immediately just stop right there and just look at the filter that he'd have to talk through. So he'd have to do it through a series of tweets.
He could do it on Hannity, and Hannity would kiss the ring.
Well, all right. I'd kiss the ring too, for that matter. It doesn't appear to be that he did anything illegal. So if we go from that assumption, and I think that's the assumption to go for, because if the New York Times went with the story and there was anything in there that looked like it would have been illegal, that would have been the lead. And since they couldn't find anything, we'll come back to that. I think Donald Trump probably did one of two things, and maybe both. He either realized that this business of not paying any federal income tax may have looked bad and didn't want to just hand that over. And second thing, and perhaps more likely, knowing how sly the man is, this may have been almost like I don't know what to call it. It's almost a trap, but similar in a way to the Barack Obama birth certificate issue. Now, I'm not going to open that whole can of worms. I saw the released birth certificate, the replacement birth certificate, and I thought there was a lot wrong with that document, but put that aside for a minute. What Obama did was he made the birth certificate thing a target for conservatives for, 2 years? And then he simply just, ta-da, see, big fuss about nothing. So that's a possibility as well, I suppose.
Well, there's some interesting insights into this from Donald Trump's own statements in the past. For example, in 2011, he wrote a book called Time to Get Tough, in which he complained that half of America doesn't pay even a single penny in federal income taxes. He says that's one of the reasons federal spending is so dangerous, because half the country just shrugs its shoulders and says, who cares? It's not my money they're spending. Now he's president of the United States. And this isn't something from the distant past, Bill, although it does carry into the distant past. It carries right up to his years at the beginning of the White House term. They don't have the 2018 and 2019 tax return, but they're showing that he almost didn't pay a penny, and in some years did not pay a penny, and in fact, in at least one year, got a $72.9 million tax refund that he's been involved in a 10-year running battle with the IRS over whether or not he should have received that.
Well, there's a lot to say here. The first thing I will say is, for those people that are outraged by this, and that's not too many of our listeners because they understand how the world works generally, there has never been a better argument for reforming the tax system of the United States. Income tax is a creeping evil, and the 16th Amendment was 16th? I think it was. That authorized an income tax. It was promised to be 1% for regular folks and maybe as high as 3% on the rich. And that's gone up since then. So income tax taxes income, and it doesn't tax wealth. And since income can be offset by losses, then you get to a place where you can not only not pay any income tax, you can actually get a refund. So the discussion of changing the tax system, I think, would be a great thing to have come out of this, because if you had something like a sales tax, everybody pays the same rate and nobody gets to cheat. Anytime you buy something, you're paying. If you don't want to pay to the government, you don't buy the thing. So that whole argument for a flat tax or a sales tax or fair tax, whatever you want to call it, might be something that could come out of this if the Democrats decide to turn this into a weapon. But I think much more importantly, to me anyway, is this. Liberals assume that people who own businesses do nothing but make money, that their employees are underpaid, that the owners of the business just continue to buy more and more stuff and they get richer and richer and richer, and then they are somehow cheating the government by trying to hold on to everything that they have, and they're awful, evil, selfish people. But what this set of tax returns tells me is it tells me something else that the American people should be aware of, at least that half of the American people that votes for Democrats, and that is this. Businesses lose money. And when a business loses money, you lose money. Money that you could have taken and put into a yacht or a mansion or if you're a Democrat, your own island filled with underage sex slaves. All of that money went into a business and it got lost because it was a business, which meant it was a risk. And so what I think also ought to come out of this is an understanding that all people who are wealthy and all business owners, every business owner, is not in a situation where they're just a money ratchet that does nothing but make money. You can lose money in a business. You can lose more money in the business than the business makes. You can put vast amounts of your own money into a business and lose that money. So if the tax codes are set up the way they are, then that's about the only thing about the tax codes that's any good is the business deduction.
Bill, I'm not sure many small business people would look at the situation that Donald Trump has built up around himself with more than 500 businesses, separately identifiable businesses that he's established. And from the New York Times review of his tax returns, and they acknowledge you can't tell everything about a person's wealth, for example. You're only getting their self-reported information, what they said was going on. While Donald Trump was bragging about the fact that he was a very successful businessman and he had a great balance sheet and his assets were worth a lot, the combination of depreciation, which is, you can play that out over a period of years on any asset, as well as tax credits that you get for doing things like when he renovated the post office in Washington and turned it into a hotel, and there's a historical tax credits for building preservation and stuff like that there. And the fact that his businesses, his golf courses, and previously his casinos, many of which, if not most of which, were actually money-losing propositions. He's not the guy he portrayed himself to be. And I don't think the average small business person in this country will look at this and go, yeah, that's just like me.
Well, we'll come back to the average small business owner in just a moment. But if you're telling me that a guy who has billions and billions of dollars of income not only didn't pay any federal income tax over the course of many years, but got a $70 million refund, I would call that a sharp businessman. I'd call that a very sharp businessman. I would say that is a businessman who understands the tax code of the United States in a way that nobody else does, because the tax code in the United States is unintelligible. It is literally unintelligible. It's stories of papers high. Nobody knows what's in it. Even as long as 10 or 20 years ago, you would see these experiments done where a certain set of income would be given to 10 different IRS representatives, not accountants. 10 different IRS representatives be presented with the same number of assets lists and the same number of receipts, same number of everything. And they found out that every single one of those 10 IRS agents came up with a different number for what the tax on that control.
But Bill, you're making it out like the president is fostering some sort of national conversation about tax reform. This is stuff he didn't want to have come out.
Well, I can see why he didn't want it to come out, but this doesn't bother me in the least, Scott. It doesn't bother me at all. He didn't break the law, and that's all that matters as far as that is concerned.
It's not established that he didn't break the law.
Well, if they didn't lead with the story, then you could pretty much bet that a pretty thorough look at it indicated nothing they could go with. So let's just assume for the moment that he didn't, because he's a smart guy. I don't think Donald Trump is the kind of guy who says, nah, they'll never check on this. I'm pretty sure he's got everything nailed down in regard to this. So look, who is upset by things like this? Who gets upset hearing that a businessman used his accountant to get every single legal tax break he possibly could? Who gets upset about things like that? People who are filled with envy and who decide that Donald Trump's money belongs to them. That's who gets upset by it.
I don't get upset by it. Though. The question I'm asking is, who gets upset by a guy who proclaims himself to be a business genius, but as far as they could tell from the tax records, the real money that he made was from the Apprentice and the one really good real estate deal that he apparently has, a continual moneymaker, which is Trump Tower. A lot of the other stuff, it seems like everything he touches sucks cash and loses money. And it's not just depreciation. When they factored out depreciation, they saw that a lot of these businesses were still major money losers, and yet he sells himself to us as if he's a business genius, and apparently he does really well playing a business genius on TV, but the documents don't seem to match up with the story.
Again, au contraire, if Donald Trump has a large number of properties that are cash sinks, that are losing money, I don't think Donald Trump keeps them open out of the warmness of his heart. In other words, anything that he has that's losing money he maintains because he wants it to lose money. I'm not saying he wants it. Let me rephrase that, because there are tax benefits
to it losing money.
That's right. It's a net gain for him. I think everything he does is a net gain for him. And that's why when people look at this and they can't understand why he didn't pay any income tax, and they can't understand why he has businesses that lose money and say he's an idiot, it's like, no, on the contrary, he's got this thing absolutely precisely understood. If he runs a business, I'm going to take numbers off the top of my head. If he runs a business that loses $1 million a year and he gets $1.5 million a year tax benefit out of that loss, or even if he gets $1 million loss and loses $1 million, and that lowers him into a different bracket or whatever the case may be, then it's a smart move to keep that thing going, and keeping the people employed there as well. So I don't buy the argument that he's an idiot and he doesn't know how to make money. I think the much bigger issue is, and by the way, we're going to the degree that we're going to hear a lot about this, we may or may not, depending on what Hollywood has to say about it.
The New York Times intends to trickle out more stories. They didn't use the term trickle, of course, but they're kind of going to play an Andrew Breitbart on this. They haven't released all the information they have, and they're going to write more stories about it going forward.
Well, in order to pull a Breitbart reveal, which I've talked about in a firewall or an afterburner, one or the other, in order to pull off the Breitbart reveal, you have to produce evidence that somebody did something illegal, and then the person denies that happened. There's no way to prove it. And then another piece of evidence is dropped, and then the denial goes even further. And the whole thing about a Breitbart reveal is you let people walk themselves into this kind of cavern of lies, and you keep dropping more evidence. So he's not falling into that trap.
Well, actually, he may be falling into that trap. He put out a message on Twitter that says, I have very little debt compared to the value of assets. I have long said that I may release financial statements from the time that I announced I was going to run for president, showing all properties, assets, and debts. So he's still promising to release the documents that he has yet to release.
And, he said he may.
And he's also bragging about the fact that he has given up his $400,000 a year presidential salary. So he's basically calling this all fake news, saying it's inaccurate information. And so now maybe the New York Times has nothing else. Maybe they shot their load at the outset, and they've got no other things that are more incriminating or damning than this.
For those people who are not familiar with the term, Donald Trump has faced a number of these. There's a pretty low-minded, low-handed political strategy called a perjury trap. And basically what happens is you may have somebody who is either doing something that's not illegal or seems to be, in the case of Donald Trump, walking his toes up to the line of the law and stopping there. And since they don't have anything against that person, since there's no evidence that they can use or anything that's actionable in terms of legal activity, what they will sometimes do is they will call that person in to testify and ask a series of questions and get that person into a situation where they provide answers that they can prove the person knew was not factually true. And now now they don't have him on tax evasion. Now they don't have him on anything except for perjury. And he wouldn't have had him on perjury if they hadn't trumped up the charges, if you'll pardon expression, to bring him in the first place. So I suspect that this is what they're reduced to now. And it seems to me, once again, as in the case of impeachment, as the case of the Ukraine call, as the case of the Russian collusion, on and on and on and on and on, This is just another balloon that they filled with lead and went crashing to the floor and sits there in the middle of the party, and everybody sits around and cries. I do think, and just to come back to this again, I do think that the case of his fully legal use of the loopholes in the law, which is the law, by the way, a loophole in the law is part of the law. I think this is an excellent chance to talk about the absurdity of income tax and the absurdity of how, just to give you one small example, Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, I think it made $4 billion, $4,000 million. And the estate of J.R.R. Tolkien, who, being decent, civilized, and soul-possessed people that they are, agreed to a deal that said that they would get a percentage of the profits from the Lord of the Rings, which was a big mistake on their part. They should have taken a much smaller slice of the gross. To make the story as quick as possible, after billions of dollars of revenue had come in, I think they got a check for something like $60,000 or $140,000, something absolutely pitiful. And when they basically went and said, what the hell are you talking about? This thing's made $4 billion. Then the movie company said, yes, but it was part of our slate, and these movies lost this money, and we put advertisement. All this is cross-collateralized, and blah, 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 blah. The legal system of taxation and to some degree, the complexity of the corporate structures in America have made it possible to do almost anything you want to with income. It's almost anything. And so this is in order to avoid income tax, according to this two-story stack of rules that only tax accountants understand. They only understand a little part of it. So this is the time now to talk seriously about a different way to raise money for the needs that we have as a government. And as far as the political outcome is concerned, to me, it just seems like another case of a little, nothing that if this is the October surprise, we're in good shape.
Final question. The executive editor of the New York Times wrote a note in the paper or on the website. I don't know if they still actually print it on paper these days, but he basically said, look, we were right to publish this. And in fact, the Supreme Court over the years has stood up for the freedom of the press to print newsworthy information that is legally obtained. Bill, assuming that the New York Times is true or honest about the legally obtained documents, do you have any objection to them publishing this material?
None whatsoever. None. That's what the press is supposed to do. When the press goes after the president's income tax statements, that's the job of the press. And when the press does these things, and when they're tough on the president, and when they're looking into all of these things, I never blame the press for doing their job. The two things I do blame the press for are they don't do their job if you've got a D after your name, and not only do they not do their job, they cover up for you. They suppress or actually cover up the news. And the second part of it is that they don't stop at doing their job. If they can't find something that is genuinely illegal, wrong, corruption, then they will invent things. And even if it does nothing more than discredit him, that's the end goal, is to bring discredit to the person and therefore to discredit the people that voted for him. So no, I don't have any problem whatsoever. If these documents were legally obtained, I don't have any problem whatsoever with the New York Times publishing a story about that, and I would expect them to do that in all cases. It would be nice if they put that kind of effort that they put into Donald Trump or Sarah Palin, if they put that kind of effort into Hillary Clinton's background or Biden's or Obama's, but they don't. So just because they don't doesn't mean that I don't want them to stop doing the small fraction of the job that they're supposed to be doing in the first place.
We're grateful to the members of BillWhittle.com for making this program possible and some 40 other shows every month, brand new content, plus the content they produce at the member written blog at BillWhittle.com. If you have been thinking about it and you have been watching these videos for a long time and you think, I wonder what it's like, it's $10 a month to find out. Why don't you go to BillWhittle.com and click that big green Become a Member button. We're guessing that you're going to enjoy it so much that you'll want to stick around. But if you don't, we will issue a rapid and cheerful refund. I do it cheerfully. Bill's not as cheerful as I am. But in any case, we will refund that money gladly because We only want people who like the product to be paying for the product.
Refund!
For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.
Refund!